Hello and welcome at SOAS video channel. Today I am going to make a pattern based on this sketch. The dress is drafted in girls' sizes. I used built-in variables to set the length of the skirt and the position of the side seam on the neckline. I'll use a template for basic sloper for girls. I have chosen it from the templates menu. We first need to define the position of this point. It is a bit lower than the bust level. I am using point function to calculate coordinates of my new point. Such a point lies on center front, right below Z1. I refer to x coordinate of Z1 using property point x. Vertically, the bust line is at the level of point N. We now need to move a bit lower. This means we need to add a y coordinate. Now let us find the corner of front yoke on the armhole. It is in the upper part of the armhole. I am going to use split function and divide the upper front armhole in two. I usually give names to the points based on their anthropometric position. P1, for example, is the front angle of armpit. I'll name my new point P11 so that it is easier to remember that it is on the front armhole. Let's split this curve into two even parts. I refer to the length of the curve, using property point L, and then multiply by 0.5. Here's our new point. The parts of the armhole have got new names. We will need these smaller objects later, in order to trace front yoke and side front separately. We now need to do the dart manipulation. The armhole is drafted when the bust dart is open. Let us close it. I use the rotate function. I need to rotate the upper part of the armhole, around the apex point N, at the dart angle. In this template the dart angle is saved into a variable angle bust, so I shall simply refer to it. You can use the built-in templates or create your own ones. It is handy to have some data predefined before drafting. We can already see the contour of our future front yoke. However, we won't be able to trace the side front just yet. The distance between apex point and corners of armholes is visually different. It would be impossible to ease this in. Looking at the sketch we can say that the dress is rather close fit. If it is to be sewn from a woven fabric, we definitely need a bust dart somewhere on the side front. Right now there is no way to shape the fabric towards the apex. I decide I'll add a slant dart in the side seam. I believe it would be nice to keep the dynamics of the style lines and direct the dart at the same angle. The cut function will help me to find a point on the side seam that lies exactly at the same angle as the style line from center bust to waistline at the side. If we translate this into drafting on paper terms, it is as follows. We shall draw a line from point N, the apex. This line will be parallel to an imaginary line from N1 to WS1. Where this line will intercross with the side of front bodice, we shall place point N2. We can now transfer the bust dart towards our new point. We will need to rotate the upper section of front bodice side upwards, so we need to name the new objects when we cut this curve. We shall rotate the second part of the bodice side, lower armhole, and the first part of the upper armhole. Again, we rotate around point N, the apex, at the angle of the bust dart. We rotate the objects clockwise, so the angle is positive. All the mentioned objects can be rotated and I won't need the original ones. It is just the N2 that I need, so I create a copy of it before I rotate. We have transferred the dart. Its corners are marked with points N2 and N2_C, the one we saved before rotate function. We also need to close the waist dart on side front, and transfer it into our new slant dart at the side seam. This part of side seam will be rotated downwards. We again rotate around apex point N. In this case we need to rotate the objects counterclockwise. We thus need to mention a negative angle in the rotate function. You can see how this part of the side seam was moved down. The bottom part of side front will be a straight line from N1 to waistline. We are ready to trace our first pattern block. I get a code sample from the Code Help button. Let's give a name to our pattern block. To trace the block, I mention the objects around its contour, going clockwise. In the dart area, we may trace the outer edges, and then draw a dart in the included elements of the pattern function. These will be two separate pieces. We don't need neither fold nor flip. I'll skip the texts and marks for now. As you can see, the pattern was drafted around the dart area. If you feel the dart is rather big and you don't need that bulk of folded fabric here, you may edit the pattern. I'll add the apex point to show you how the contour changes. When you mention a point in the trace parameter, the contour will jump to it, and then jump to the start of the next object you mentioned. Here's the side front with bust dart transferred upwards, and waist dart transferred downwards. Both darts are accounted for in the area between N2 and N2_C. Now to the next pattern block. We see in the sketch that the neckline is V-shaped. It follows the slope of the style line below. There's not enough room to make a V-shaped neckline here, so I'll move the end of the side seam further towards the shoulder. To find the bottom corner of the neckline, I am going to use the meet function. On paper we would draw a line from point Y1 that is parallel to the style line below, and intercross it with center front line. Let's tell the software it needs to draw a line from Y1 at that direction. The other line starts at Z1 and goes vertically down, that is at 90 degrees. This is our new front neckline. Let us trace the front yoke. Its contour goes from point N1 straight at the upper front armhole, then along the shoulder to Y1, and then down to the bottom corner of the neckline. Just one piece needs to be cut, and the line between point X and point N1 needs to be placed on fold. Let's paint this block pink. Here's our new block. The natural line of the neck is here. I'll make the neckline a bit deeper. You can also preview pattern blocks here. You may even download this preview as a PDF file, cut out the pieces, glue them together and make a mini paper dress. That does save a lot of fabric when testing your new pattern for obvious flaws. Now to the front skirt. This edge will be sewn to the bottom edge of the side front. However, we closed the waist dart on side front, and it is still there on the skirt, so we need to close it as well. While we think how to attack this issue, let's fix the flare of the skirt. It does look not a straight, but a flared one. You can only flare the skirt to a certain degree simply adding to the angle of the side seam. Some books and blogs will tell you to just add to the side and draw a new hem. I personally don't think this works well. The sides of the skirt are going to be longish and stick to the sides. It is better to use a tapered spread in such a case. This is probably the maximal spread I dare to make in this way. However, for this very pattern we can use even less. The pleats will add to the length of the hem anyway. A nice smooth A-line side seam. I'll leave it as this, and will make further decisions when testing my paper model in muslin. We now return to this dart. I decided to do it in a straightforward way. I will transfer the dart bulk to center seam, and make the upper edge of the front skirt a straight line. Not an ideal solution, but it will let me demonstrate the intercept function. You can see the documentation on the screen. If we translate it into draft on paper language, it is as follows. Let us say we have point D, and a line that goes from point D to the right. We want to find points on this line that are exactly 35 centimeters apart from point P. In the case of this pattern, the radius of the compass is the total length of the bottom edge of side front. We need to be able to sew the front skirt to the side front without easing it in. The idea is to keep the height of the pattern block along center front exactly the same. This means the point we are looking for is at the same horizontal level as N1. Point WS1 is where the needle of our compass would be placed. The compass goes clockwise and crosses the line we described. In this case, it will be a horizontal line from point N1 to the left. We now need to cut away the excessive fabric along the center side seam. I use the cut function to find the new bottom end of center front. It will lie on the front hem. I'll erase the first section of it. The second section will be my new front hem. This is me erasing the first section of the old front hem. And this is the Sewist pattern online designer drafting our new front skirt. We can now trace this pattern block. This will be a one-folded piece. Let's say, in lime color. We only need to make the pleat now. There is a special function that does just that. It works with the whole pattern, so we need to give a name to our front skirt. Simply add a name before the pattern function and the equation sign. Mention the name of your pattern as the first parameter. Now mention a reference point inside the pattern or on its contour, that is where the fold of our pleat will be placed. We now need to define the depth of the pleat, not the whole width of the pleat area on a printed pattern, but the actual depth, the distance from the visible fold to the inner fold of the depth. The angle here defines where the fold line is directed, as seen from the reference point. Vertically down, for example, stands for 90 degrees. And the side parameter lets us fold our pleat to the right or to the left. Let's experiment. This is pleat made with sides set to 1. If you imagine standing on this draft at V121 and looking where the angle in the function tells you, the bulk of the pleat will be to the left. If we set the side to 2, the bulk will be to the right. For this pattern we actually need the bulk to be to the left. I'll just stand here while the software does all the drafting. Let's see what the pattern blocks look like. This is something you can print out, glue together and see what your pattern looks like in small scale. It is not the same as making muslin. Paper is more stiff. It will clearly show the wrong apexes and the mismatched seams. We have finished drafting the front of this dress. To keep this video shorter, I shall draft the back, the sleeve and the neckline facings behind the screens. Let's just see why we went into all this trouble with formulas and percentages. Let's grade our dress. The template we based our dress on is very adaptive. The darts are calculated according to anthropometry, and ease allowances are set depending on the age. The software has just graded it before your eyes for 2 years old. And now for 6 years old. And now for 6 years old, plus size. It takes the software a second or two to redraft the whole pattern to a new set of measurements that is provided from our database of anthropometric sizes. I hope you enjoyed this pattern design demonstration. Stay tuned. Sewist.com will release the online pattern designer in just a couple of weeks. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to beta test, please send us an email at info@sewist.com, or leave a comment under this video. Happy sewing!